The desert stretches for miles, a sea of endless dunes that swallow the horizon, but beneath that relentless ocean of sand lies a secret that has waited 1,000 years to be heard. What civilization could have flourished where only wind and heat reign, and why did it vanish without a trace, leaving only the faint outline of walls that glow like a phantom in satellite images? In 2015, a team of French and Algerian archaeologists, guided by a curious anomaly on a Landsat photograph, stumbled upon a geometric pattern buried deep beneath the Erg Chebi dunes. The shape resembled a perfect rectangle, its corners aligned with the cardinal points, and its dimensions matched those of a modest fortified settlement. When the sand was brushed aside, stone foundations emerged, large, weathered blocks arranged in orderly rows, a central courtyard, and what appears to be a collapsed tower. The artifacts recovered tell a story that refuses to fit any known timeline. Pottery shards bear a glaze unlike any known North African ware, their pigments containing copper and iron in a composition that suggests a sophisticated firing technique lost to modern craftsmen. A handful of bronze tools, polished to a mirror sheen, bear inscriptions that echo the ancient Tifinagh script, yet the characters are interlaced with symbols never recorded in any Berber codex. Some scholars propose a link to the enigmatic Garamantian kingdom, whose influence once reached deep into the Sahara, but the city's layout, its streets laid out in a grid, the presence of a large water cistern, suggests a level of urban planning far beyond what we have attributed to those desert dwellers. Even more puzzling is the layer of ash found in a sealed chamber beneath the main plaza. Radiocarbon dating places the ash at roughly 300 years old, a period that coincides with the rise of the Roman Empire, yet no Roman artifacts have been uncovered. Could this be evidence of a trade outpost that fell victim to a sudden, catastrophic fire? Or perhaps the city was abandoned after a massive sandstorm, its inhabitants buried alive as the dunes shifted, preserving their structures like a time capsule. Local oral traditions speak of the City of the Silent Wind, a place where travelers reported hearing faint whispers carried on the breeze, as if the very sand remembered the voices of those who once walked its streets. No one has been able to verify these accounts, but the eerie echo that reverberates when the wind passes through the uncovered arches gives the impression that the desert itself is trying to speak. To this day, the site remains only partially excavated, its deeper chambers still hidden beneath compacted dunes. Each new layer unearthed raises more questions than answers, and the darkness that cloaks the Sahara seems to hold its secrets tighter with every sunrise. What civilization dared to carve a city out of stone in the heart of a relentless desert, and what fate silenced it forever? The sand keeps its story, waiting for a brave enough hand to turn the page. What if a massive stone slab, half buried in the unforgiving sands of the Sahara, could swing open on its own, as if summoned by a forgotten hand? Travelers for centuries have spoken of the Gate of Tainare, a monolithic doorway that appears in the desolate heart of the desert and vanishes without a trace when the wind changes direction. The story begins in the early 20th century, when a French-German expedition, led by the geographer Pierre Gauthier, set out to chart the remote Tainare region of northeastern Niger. After weeks of scorching heat and endless dunes, the party stumbled upon a rectangular opening cut into a sheer limestone cliff, its edges perfectly dressed with a precision no natural erosion could achieve. The doorway stood 12 meters tall, its threshold worn smooth by countless footsteps that seemed impossible to count. Yet there was no bridge, no road, no settlement nearby, only the endless sea of sand. When the explorers approached, the stone slab rested firmly against the opening, as heavy as a fortress wall. Suddenly, a low rumble rolled across the dunes, and the slab shuddered. Within moments, the massive door swung inward, revealing a dark cavity that descended into the earth like an abyss. Inside, the air was cool, scented with the faint hint of ancient incense, and walls were lined with faintly etched symbols that no one could decipher. Local Tuareg nomads call it Tichka Entainere, the door of the desert, and they claim it opens only at the precise moment when the sun aligns with the distant horizon, casting a narrow beam of light across the threshold. Some elders say the gate is a relic of a lost Saharan civilization that thrived before the desert swallowed their cities, a civilization whose name has been erased from every surviving record. Others whisper that the doorway is a natural phenomenon, a rare geological hinge triggered by temperature shifts that cause the stone to expand and contract, yet no scientific study has ever been permitted to examine it, because the desert guards its secret jealously. The French reports describe the interior as a shallow chamber, its floor littered with fragments of pottery, a handful of polished beads, and a single bronze disc etched with a spiral that seems to pulse when touched. No artifacts have been recovered since, as every time an expedition returns, the door is found sealed, the slab immovable, as if the desert itself decided the secret was not to be shared. The Gate of Ténéré remains a paradox, an engineered marvel appearing in a place where no human hand should have worked, yet offering no clue to its purpose, its builders, or the world that lies beyond. As the wind continues to sculpt the dunes, the stone door waits, patient and silent, for the next curious soul, daring enough to step through its threshold, only to leave behind a question that echoes louder than any scream. What lies on the other side of a gate that opens without a key? What if the stone walls of a remote cliff were speaking a language that no scholar could ever decipher? A script that seemed to pulse with intention, yet refused every attempt at translation. Deep within the wind-swept heights of the Anatolian Plateau, a series of petroglyphs were uncovered by a team of archaeologists in 2019. At first glance, they resembled the familiar motifs of hunting scenes and solar discs common to Bronze Age cultures. But scattered among them were clusters of geometric symbols unlike anything recorded in the canon of known alphabets. Their lines are sharp, interlocking like a puzzle made of light, each glyph composed of concentric circles, spirals that converge into a single point, and a series of repeating, Z-shaped strokes that seem to echo one another across the rock face. Similar carvings have been reported in 3 other locations: the cliffs of the Taman Peninsula in Russia, the limestone terraces of the Brazilian Amazon near the Xingu River, and a hidden cave in the highlands of New Guinea. In each case, the symbols appear in isolation, never accompanied by pictograms of animals or human figures, suggesting they were not decorative but communicative. Researchers have applied statistical analysis, comparing the frequency of each sign to known writing systems, yet the patterns resist classification. Some linguists argue the marks could be a form of proto-writing, an early attempt at abstract representation that predates the Sumerian cuneiform by millennia. Others propose a ceremonial purpose, perhaps a code used by a secretive priesthood to record rites that were never meant for the eyes of outsiders. Adding to the mystery, several of the sites contain a subtle alignment with celestial events. The Anatolian panel faces directly toward the point on the horizon where the sunrise aligns with the summer solstice, while the Brazilian terrace's symbols are illuminated by the moon's first quarter in a precise sequence that repeats every 19 years. Could these alignments be a clue, a cosmic calendar encoded in stone? Or are they merely coincidences, the product of human tendency to see order where none exists? The most unsettling evidence comes from the New Guinea cave, where researchers discovered a shallow depression beneath the carvings that, when filled with water, reflects the symbols as a shimmering, inverted image. Some indigenous elders claim the site is the mouth of the ancestors, a place where spirits once spoke in signs that modern eyes cannot hear. Despite carbon dating that places the carvings at roughly 500 years old, no comparable script appears in any contemporary culture, leaving scholars grasping at thin threads of speculation. So the question lingers: are we looking at a lost language, an ancient ritual code, or something altogether different? Perhaps a universal visual language that transcended borders and was deliberately erased from history. The stone remains silent, its symbols staring back at us from the abyss of time, daring us to unlock a message that may have been intended to stay hidden. What if a bronze statue, forged 3 millennia ago, holds a secret that looks startlingly like a modern astronaut's helmet? Deep in the ruins of a forgotten Mycenaean citadel, archaeologists uncovered a small figure that has haunted scholars ever since. A bronze man, his head encased in a smooth, dome-shaped cap, his eyes fixed on an empty horizon. At first glance, the artifact seems like any other warrior statuette from the late Bronze Age, but a closer look reveals a perplexing detail. The helmet is not riveted, not dented by battle, and its polished surface reflects light in a way that suggests it was never meant to be worn. The figure stands only 24 centimeters tall, its limbs rendered with an uncanny realism. Muscles, tendons, even the subtle curve of the fingers. Yet the head is a perfect sphere, seamless and flawless, with a narrow slit where a visor might have been. Some researchers argue that the cap is simply an artistic stylization of a Mycenaean war helmet, perhaps an early form of the boar's tusk design. Others, however, point to the uncanny resemblance to the helmets used by 20th century astronauts, a coincidence that feels too precise to ignore. The discovery was made in 1998 during the excavation of a burial chamber beneath the Palace of Pylos. The chamber contained an array of grave goods, golden diadems, ivory combs, and a cache of bronze weapons, yet the bronze astronaut stood apart, untouched by the rust that claimed its companions. Radiocarbon dating of the surrounding charcoal places the burial around 1300 BCE, a period when Mycenaean civilization was at its zenith. Yet the technology to cast such a smooth, hollow sphere would have required a level of metallurgical skill that even the most advanced ancient foundries did not possess, at least according to current understanding. Some scholars propose that the cap was a ritualistic crown of the sun, a symbolic device meant to connect the wearer with celestial forces. In the mythic world of the Greeks, the heavens were a realm of gods and heroes, and a bronze headpiece could represent a conduit to that divine sphere. Others suggest a more terrestrial explanation. The statue may have been a toy, a child's imagination of a warrior with an oversized helmet, fashioned by a craftsman experimenting with new forms. The mystery deepens when we compare the figure to similar artifacts from distant lands. Bronze heads from the Indus Valley, for instance, exhibit a comparable smoothness, yet none bear the same dome-shaped cap. In the far-flung Andes, a pre-Columbian ceramic figurine shows a helmet that mirrors the same seamless curvature, hinting at a possible cross-cultural archetype of the protected head. Could these parallels be a case of convergent artistic imagination, or do they whisper of a lost tradition that spanned continents? Even the most skeptical voices concede that the bronze astronaut remains an enigma. No ancient texts describe such a headgear, and no contemporary depictions of Mycenaean warriors show anything resembling it. The figure sits in the National Archaeological Museum of Athens, under a glass case, its eyes forever turned toward a future we cannot fully grasp. As we stare at its polished dome, we are left with a chilling question. Did the ancients once envision a world beyond the Earth, or have we simply projected our modern myths onto an artifact that was, in its own time, a mystery beyond comprehension? The answer, like the bronze helmet's reflective surface, remains just out of reach, shimmering in the shadows of history. Have you ever stood on the edge of a wind-scarred dune, watched the sun disappear behind a horizon of endless gold, and then felt the very sand beneath your feet pulse with an eerie, blood-red glow? In the remote stretches of the Sahara's southern fringe, a strange phenomenon repeats like a whispered secret among the nomads. As twilight deepens, the ordinary ochre sand transforms into a sea of crimson, as if the desert itself were bleeding. The first recorded accounts date back to the early 20th century French explorer René Lefebvre, who described a carpet of scarlet spreading across the dunes, shimmering like fresh wounds under the moon. Modern trekkers, equipped with satellite-grade GPS and high-definition video, have captured the same haunting scene night after night, yet no scientific consensus explains why the sand appears to ignite with a ruby hue only after the sun has set. One prevailing theory points to the presence of iron-rich minerals, primarily hematite, embedded in the sand grains. During daylight, the sun's ultraviolet rays saturate the surface, causing these particles to oxidize and store energy. When darkness falls, a rapid temperature drop triggers a subtle release of that stored energy, prompting the iron oxides to fluoresce in the near-infrared spectrum, which our eyes perceive as deep red. Laboratory analysis of samples from the Crimson Dunes indeed reveals unusually high concentrations of nanoscale hematite, far exceeding those found in neighboring deserts. Another, more speculative hypothesis suggests a biological component. Certain extremophile bacteria, akin to the red pigmented Arthробacter asterisk species discovered in Antarctic soils, can produce carotenoid pigments that turn vivid when exposed to the low light wavelengths of dusk. Researchers who have taken core samples report traces of microbial DNA that thrive in hyper-arid conditions, hinting that a microscopic bloom could be responsible for the fleeting scarlet veil. Local folklore adds yet another layer of mystery. The Tuareg call the phenomenon the night's blood, believing it to be the spirit of a long-lost caravan whose mournful cries seep into the earth each evening. They warn travelers to avoid the dunes after dark, lest the sand claim their souls as it does the blood of the dead. What makes this crimson transformation truly unsettling is its consistency. No matter the season, no matter the intensity of the preceding heatwave, the sand's color shift recurs with uncanny precision. Just as the last sliver of sun kisses the horizon, the dunes blush. Some scientists argue that the effect may be an optical illusion amplified by the desert's low humidity and the scattering of twilight's longer wavelengths, while others remain convinced that a still unknown chemical or biological catalyst lies hidden beneath the grains. Until a definitive answer emerges, the blood-stained sand remains a living riddle, a reminder that even the most barren landscapes can harbor secrets that bleed into the night. The next time you watch the sun sink behind a dune, ask yourself, is the desert merely reflecting the sky's dying light, or is it shedding a silent, scarlet tear that no one has yet learned to dry? Imagine standing on a windswept plateau in the heart of the Iberian Peninsula, where a line of stone towers rises like the skeletal fingers of a forgotten giant. They are the so-called whispering windmills, monolithic structures built centuries before the first wind turbines ever turned. Their purpose has been the subject of fevered debate for generations, but what truly chills the bone is the low, resonant hum that seems to emanate from their very cores whenever the wind slips through the narrow stone slits. The first documented account dates back to a 16th century monk named Fray Mateo, who wrote in his diary that the towers speak in a voice older than the hills, a murmuring that rattles the marrow of any who listen. Modern researchers have equipped the site with sensitive audio equipment, only to capture a series of frequencies that defy conventional explanation. The tones sit below the range of human hearing, yet when played back through subwoofer speakers, they induce a subtle vibration in the chest, as if the stones themselves are breathing. Archaeologists have uncovered a complex network of internal chambers, each lined with a layer of calcite that vibrates when struck by the wind. Some scholars argue these were primitive acoustic amplifiers, designed to carry messages across the landscape. Others propose a more esoteric function, a resonant calendar that marks celestial events through harmonic shifts. In fact, on the summer solstice, the hum rises in pitch, aligning with the exact moment the sun reaches its highest point, a phenomenon recorded in a weathered parchment now housed in the National Museum of Archaeology. Local folklore adds another layer of intrigue. Villagers from nearby villages tell stories of shepherds who vanished after hearing a Song of the Stones, only to return days later, eyes vacant, speaking in a language no one could decipher. Some believe the towers were built by an unknown culture that possessed advanced knowledge of acoustics, perhaps even of the Earth's own electromagnetic field. One theory suggests that the stone's mineral composition interacts with the planet's natural hum, creating a feedback loop that produces the eerie tones. What remains undeniable is the physical evidence. The precise alignment of each tower with distant mountain peaks, the uniform angle of the ventilation shafts, and the faint, weathered carvings that resemble waveforms rather than any known script. These carvings could be a primitive attempt to map sound, a visual representation of the invisible frequencies that still echo through the stones today. As night falls and the wind picks up, the towers come alive. The air grows thick with a low, humming vibration that seems to pulse with the heartbeat of the earth itself. It is a sound that cannot be explained by wind alone, a whisper from a time when humanity's relationship with sound was perhaps far more intimate than we can imagine. And as the wind carries that ancient chorus across the plateau, one cannot help but wonder, were these towers merely monuments, or did they serve as a bridge between the physical world and a realm of frequencies we are only beginning to hear? The answer, like the wind itself, slips through our fingers, leaving only the lingering echo of a mystery that refuses to be silenced. The wind that sweeps across the endless dunes of the Sahara carries more than sand. It whispers of a secret buried beneath the dunes for millennia, a secret that some call the lost library of the desert. Imagine a caravan of nomads, their camels weary, stumbling upon a hollowed stone cavern half buried in ochre. Inside, the air is cool and stale, the walls lined with cracked, sun-bleached shelves. On those shelves lie dozens of parchment scrolls, their fibers still intact, their ink a deep, almost metallic black that has not faded despite the relentless heat above. The first scholars to describe the find were a small French expedition in 1932, led by the archaeologist Henry Boulanger. They recorded glyphs that resembled no known script, an elegant blend of early Berber symbols and something far older, perhaps a remnant of a pre-Egyptian trade network. But the most unsettling feature of the scrolls is not their script. It is the celestial maps sketched in the margins. Constellations are plotted with a precision that rivals modern star charts, yet the patterns do not correspond to any known asterism. One diagram shows a bright star positioned where the night sky today is empty. Another links a series of faint points that form a shape resembling a serpent winding across the Milky Way. Some historians argue these could be mythic representations, symbolic rather than literal. Others, astronomers like Dr. Layla Mahmoud of the University of Cairo, have measured the angles and suggest the positions align with a sky as it would have appeared over 7,000 years ago during the African humid period when the Sahara was a verdant corridor. If that is true, the scrolls might be a fossilized record of a night sky that no human eyes have ever witnessed. Yet the most chilling clue is a short passage, translated roughly as, "When the serpent rises above the twin fires, the earth will drink its blood." The twin fires could refer to a binary star system, a phenomenon unknown to ancient peoples, but one that modern astrophysics has only begun to catalog. Some speculative researchers propose that the serpent could be a comet or even a rogue planet passing through the solar system, an event that would have left a brief, luminous imprint on the night sky. No one knows what happened to the original cavern after Boulanger's team left. Local Bedouin tales speak of a sudden sandstorm that buried the entrance forever, as if the desert itself refused to surrender its knowledge. Subsequent satellite imagery shows only a subtle depression, indistinguishable from natural erosion. The scrolls, according to the expedition's log, were packed into crates and shipped to a museum in Paris, where they vanished during the chaos of World War II. Their current whereabouts remain a mystery, and the fragments of the star maps continue to haunt scholars who wonder, were these ancient astronomers gazing at a sky that no longer exists? Or were they recording a celestial event so rare that the universe has yet to repeat it? The desert keeps its silence, and the answer remains locked in a handful of fragile parchments, waiting for a wind strong enough to uncover them once more. What if a piece of paper, drawn centuries ago, could foretell a place that never existed? Yet the earth later revealed its hidden truth. The story begins with a weather-worn parchment tucked away in the archives of the Royal Geographical Society, a map that has haunted cartographers for more than 300 years. Its creator, an anonymous French explorer known only as Le Cartographe, sketched a sprawling desert landscape, but at the heart of the barren expanse, he placed a delicate blue oval labeled simply Oasis Mirage. No contemporary accounts mention such a water source, and early travelers across the Sahara dismissed the feature as a fanciful flourish, a cartographic error, or an outright hoax. For decades, the illustration sat unnoticed, its ink faded by the desert sun, until 1932, when a British aeronautical survey team, flying over the remote Thames-roofed basin, caught a glint of something unusual on their photographs. The images showed a faint, crescent-shaped depression surrounded by a ring of darker soil, exactly where the old map marked the phantom oasis. Subsequent ground expeditions uncovered a shallow basin, once fed by an underground aquifer that burst to the surface during a rare climatic shift in the late 17th century, creating a temporary lake that vanished as quickly as it appeared. The mystery deepens when researchers compare the Mirage map to other phantom, cartographic entries from the age of exploration. Similar anomalies, like the island of Brasil on early Portuguese charts, were later validated by archaeological finds. Some scholars argue that Le Cartographe may have accessed oral legends from Tuareg nomads who spoke of a hidden spring that appeared only after the Great Wind swept the dunes. Others propose a more speculative theory, that the map was drawn from an earlier, perhaps even prehistoric, source, a stone slab etched with a landscape that survived a catastrophic flood, its memory encoded in the desert's shifting sands. Regardless of its origin, the Mirage map forces us to confront a chilling possibility: that the world still hides cartographic ghosts, inked long before modern satellites, waiting to be revealed when the Earth finally remembers. As the wind whispers over the cracked crust of the Thames-roofed, one cannot help but wonder how many other forgotten oases lie beneath the dunes, waiting for a chance to surface, if only we possess the eyes or the maps to see them. What if the very heartbeat of the Earth could be heard, not with seismic tremors, but with the soft, relentless rush of water hidden miles beneath our feet? Deep in a limestone cavern system far from any human settlement, a team of speleologists installed a network of hydrophones, hoping to catch the faintest whisper of an underground river that, on the surface, simply does not exist. The first playback was eerie, a low, steady murmur that rose and fell like an ancient organ, its cadence impossible to trace to any known source. The recordings were taken in the Grotto of the Silent Flow, a cavern whose name was given by the local shepherds who, for generations, reported a strange pressure in their ears when passing the nearby hills, as if the ground itself were humming. When the microphones were lowered into the abyss, the sound was unmistakable. A river moving over smooth stone, its current churning in perfect rhythm, yet no water ever broke the surface of the cavern. The water, scientists hypothesize, travels through a network of fissures and porous rock layers, a subterranean artery that never reaches the open air. What makes this acoustic phenomenon truly baffling is its consistency. Over months, the river's song has remained unchanged, even after heavy rains, earthquakes, and a minor collapse of a ceiling stalactite. Some researchers suggest the river is fed by an ancient aquifer sealed during the last glacial maximum, its flow now maintained by a delicate pressure balance deep within the Earth's crust. Others point to the possibility of a massive underground lake whose surface tension dampens any wave, turning the lake into a silent conduit that only sound can betray. Local folklore tells of a water spirit that guards the mountain, a being that only speaks in the language of currents. While such stories cannot be measured, they echo the same mystery captured on tape. A river that exists without a visible source, a sound that persists without a visible river. Each playback sends a shiver down the spine of anyone who hears it, because it reminds us that beneath the solid ground we tread, the planet still holds hidden veins, pulsing with life we have yet to understand. The question remains, if we can hear the river, what else is flowing unseen, waiting for a voice to carry its secret to the surface? The wind howls through the craggy peaks of the remote Caucasus Range, and as the last embers of twilight fade, a faint, impossible light begins to pulse from the heart of an ancient stone cairn. Travelers who have dared to set foot on the forgotten trail speak of a single, perfectly formed crystal, known among locals as the Midnight Sunstone, nestled deep within a fissure that opens only when the moon hangs at its zenith. No torch or lantern can match the cold, silver glow that radiates from its facets, a luminescence that seems to breathe with the rhythm of the night itself. The story of the Sunstone begins in a 12th century chronicle written by a hermit monk named Father Ilya. He described a shimmering heart of night that would reveal itself to those who approached the cairn at exactly 12 o'clock, neither noon nor midnight, but the hour the villagers called the witching hour, when the veil between worlds is said to thin. According to the manuscript, the stone emitted a light that did not warm the air, yet illuminated the surrounding rock with a pale, ethereal sheen, casting shadows that moved like living things. Modern explorers have tried to verify the claim. In 1973, a Soviet geological team equipped with infrared cameras and spectrometers entered the site. They reported that, precisely at 00:00:00 local time, the crystal began to glow without any detectable heat signature. The spectrograph showed a narrow emission line at 694 nm, a wavelength not associated with any known mineral fluorescence. When the team attempted to extract the stone, it ceased its glow instantly, as if some unseen force rejected disturbance. Scientists are left with more questions than answers. Some hypothesize that the sunstone contains trapped bioluminescent bacteria, yet no organic material has ever been detected inside its flawless lattice. Others suggest a rare form of piezoelectric quartz that responds to subtle tidal stresses in the Earth's crust. But the timing, aligned perfectly with a human-defined hour, defies any geological rhythm. A handful of local folklore scholars argue that the stone is a relic of a pre-Christian pagan rite, a talisman meant to guide nocturnal rites of passage, its light serving as a beacon for those who walked the night paths. What is most unsettling is the recurring pattern reported by witnesses. After the stone's brief flare, a low, humming resonance fills the cavern, audible only to those standing within arm's length of the crystal. Those who listen claim the tone resembles a distant choir, a single note that lingers in the mind long after the cavern returns to darkness. The resonance has never been recorded, and attempts to capture it with modern equipment have resulted in only static. So the Midnight Sunstone remains locked in its cold, silent prison, waiting for the next seeker to arrive at the witching hour. Does the stone hold a fragment of forgotten celestial energy, a message from a lost civilization, or is it merely a trick of the mind, a shared hallucination born of isolation and myth? The answers lie hidden beneath the stone's unblinking stare, and perhaps some mysteries are meant to glow only in the darkest of hours, leaving us to wonder what other secrets the night still guards. Imagine stepping into the black belly of a limestone cavern, a place where time has been sealed in ochre and charcoal for tens of thousands of years. The air is thick with the scent of earth, the echo of dripping water, and something far older than any human memory, a silent testimony to a world that once teetered on the edge of myth and reality. Here, on the walls of Lascaux, Chauvet, and the remote caves of the Sahara, ancient hands left behind more than hunting scenes, they etch the silhouettes of beings that seem to belong to a realm beyond our comprehension. Take the towering figure from the El Castillo cave in Spain, a creature with a massive, elongated torso, legs that curve like the limbs of a great feline, yet its head bears a crown of antlers that sprout in every direction. Scholars have long debated whether this is a stylized aurochs, a shaman in trance, or perhaps a guardian of the dunes, a being imagined to protect the fragile oasis of life that the desert offered its early inhabitants. In the Sahara's Gabero site, a series of charcoal outlines portray a hybrid animal, the body of a lion, the snout of a crocodile, and a tail that ends in a feathered plume. The same image appears in the paintings of the Bhimbetkar rock shelters in India, suggesting a shared symbolic language that spanned continents. The motifs repeat with unsettling regularity. In the depths of the Cueva de los Muertos in Mexico, a cluster of figures stands on a ridge, each with a single, unblinking eye in the center of their foreheads, arms outstretched as if warding off an unseen threat. Some researchers argue these one-eyed watchers were believed to control the winds that swept across the dunes, guiding caravans and protecting nomads from sandstorms that could erase whole villages in a single night. Others propose they are depictions of celestial beings, ancient astronomers who map the stars and assign them protective roles over the earth below. Even the pigment composition hints at reverence. The reds and ochres were harvested from iron-rich clays found only in specific riverbeds, transported across harsh terrain to reach these remote shelters. The effort required to procure and apply such materials suggests these images were more than decorative. They were rituals, an invocation of power. When a tribe gathered around the fire, the flickering flames would illuminate the painted guardians, casting their elongated shadows onto the cavern walls, making the creatures appear to move, to breathe, to watch. What does it mean that societies separated by oceans and millennia shared such strikingly similar visions of hybrid protectors? Some anthropologists argue that the human brain, faced with the endless roar of the desert wind, constructs a guardian figure to personify the unknown, a psychological anchor against the chaos of the dunes. Yet, the precision of the details, antlers that mirror the branching of desert scrub, feathers that echo the patterns of sand ripples, suggests a deeper, perhaps collective memory of creatures that once roamed the earth, now long extinct, leaving only their mythic echo on stone. The mystery remains. Were these painted beings imagined to keep the dunes at bay? Or were they a forgotten species that walked alongside early humans, their existence erased by time but preserved in pigment? As we trace our fingertips over the faded lines, a cold shiver runs down the spine, and the question lingers, unanswered, like a whisper carried on the desert wind. What truly prowls the endless sea of sand, and why did our ancestors feel the need to bind it forever to the walls of their hidden sanctuaries? The wind howled over the basalt cliffs like a chorus of restless spirits as the final team of surveyors set foot on the Forgotten Ridge, a place locals called the Silent Maw. Their mission was simple on paper: map the uncharted limestone terraces that rose like a broken stairway into the clouds, document the strange magnetic anomalies reported by satellite, and collect samples of the black, glassy rock that glittered in the dim light. Yet, as they trekked deeper into the maw, the atmosphere itself seemed to thicken, as if the very air were saturated with an ancient memory that refused to be forgotten. The first strange sign appeared at the third outcrop, a series of perfectly carved grooves, each exactly 1 meter apart, etched into the stone with a precision no known prehistoric culture could achieve. They formed a perfect spiral, converging toward a shallow depression that held a pool of water as dark as obsidian. When one of the geologists lowered a metal rod into the pool, the needle on his compass spun wildly, pointing in every direction at once, while the water emitted a faint, pulsing luminescence that bathed the surrounding walls in an eerie blue glow. Further along the ridge, the team uncovered a shattered monolith, its surface covered in a dense script of unknown glyphs. Some scholars compare the symbols to the enigmatic Rongorongo of Easter Island, while others argue they belong to a lost language predating even the earliest Sumerian tablets. The glyphs, when traced with a flashlight, seem to rearrange themselves, forming new patterns that hinted at a possible map, perhaps a guide to a hidden chamber deeper within the mountain. In the cavern they finally reached, the floor was littered with thousands of tiny, perfectly spherical stones, each the size of a pea, arranged in concentric circles that radiated outward like the ripples of a stone dropped into water. The stones resonated with a low hum when disturbed, a sound that resonated in the bone, not merely the ear. Instruments recorded frequencies that matched no known natural source, and some members reported fleeting visions of a city of towers bathed in violet light, vanished long before any recorded civilization. Their last transmission, a garbled whisper over the radio, spoke of the heart of the mountain, a throbbing pulse that seemed to sync with the team's own heartbeats. The final words were a question, breathless and trembling. Did we just awaken something that has waited for centuries? And then the signal faded into static, leaving only the echo of the wind and the unanswered mystery of what lay within the silent maw. The wind has carved a relentless silence across the barren expanse, and when the sand finally settles, it reveals a landscape that feels older than memory itself. A desert that keeps its secrets buried beneath dunes of oblivion. What lies hidden in this dark heart? Scholars, explorers, and nomads have all tried to read the whispers of stone, bone, and ash, yet every clue only deepens the enigma. In the remote reaches of the Sahara, a cluster of perfectly circular stone formations rises from the plain like the bones of some forgotten creature. Known locally as the ghost circles, they are composed of massive limestone blocks, each weighing several tons, arranged with a precision that defies the tools of any known Bronze Age culture. No quarry has ever been found nearby, no mortar binds them, and the circles show no signs of weathering that would align with their presumed age. Some propose that they are the remnants of a lost trade outpost. Others suggest a ritual site for a civilization erased before history could record it. The truth remains as unmoving as the stones themselves. Further east, beneath the dunes of the Rub al Khali, a network of tunnels has been discovered by satellite imaging, their geometry eerily reminiscent of modern subway schematics. Inside, explorers have reported walls stained with a reddish mineral that glows faintly under moonlight, and strange glyphs that resemble no known script. One theory links them to a nomadic people who, according to oral tradition, possessed knowledge of the Earth's breath, a phrase that may hint at a lost understanding of geology or perhaps something far more mystical. Yet, no artifacts have been recovered, and the tunnels collapse as quickly as they are entered, erasing any chance of comprehensive study. The most chilling mystery, however, lies not in stone but in bone. In 1927, a German expedition uncovered a burial site near the edge of the Taklamakan, where dozens of human skeletons were arranged in a perfect circle, each facing toward the center, where a single, massive obsidian shard rested on a pedestal of sand. The bodies bore no signs of trauma, but their teeth were stained with a dark, metallic residue that modern analysis identifies as a rare alloy of copper and arsenic, an alloy that was not known to be produced in that region until centuries later. Some researchers argue that the site is a ritualistic time capsule left by an itinerant priesthood, while others whisper of an ancient cult that attempted to harness the desert's magnetic storms. The shard itself, when examined under polarized light, exhibits a faint, pulsing luminescence that intensifies during sandstorms, as if the desert itself is feeding it energy. Every expedition that returns from these places carries more questions than answers. Are these structures the remnants of a civilization that vanished long before the pyramids? Did the desert preserve a cache of knowledge too dangerous for the world above? Or are we simply projecting our own yearning for mystery onto a landscape that, by its very nature, refuses to be understood? The sand will shift again, erasing footprints and exposing new riddles. And as long as the dunes keep moving, the desert's dark heart will keep beating with unanswered questions that echo into the night.